Welcome back to Heart of Glass, the video podcast, the show that takes a deeper, more intimate look at the humans that make up the heartbeat of the Glass City. I'm your host, Ashley Cohn, and we are filming back here again at Toledo Spirits, our wonderful sponsor. If you haven't had the chance to try their Heart of Glass vodka, make sure you do. It's excellent. And as our very first guest, Big C, said, it is so smooth that you can taste it. So make sure to give it a try if you haven't already. Today's guest is multifaceted, to say the least. He is a proud and devoted father, a talented singer-songwriter, a painter, a sculptor, a carver, a food artist, and a theological, philosophical, agnostic, mystic, very cool dude. I have deep respect for him, and I'm so glad that he's agreed to be with us here today and have a good conversation with me. I give you Mr. Ryan Roth.
Oh, it is good to see you
It
again.
is so good to see you. It's been too long. I think it's been since pre-pandemic, right, that I've seen you?
Yeah, we bumped into each other pre-pandemic. Probably Acoustic for Autism right before they shut everything down.
Yeah, I actually thought about that because I actually recognized that I didn't get to see you this year. I knew you were there, but I didn't get to see you. So I'm so glad that, man, I feel like this conversation is going to be like the 10,000 conversations that we would have had in between last time I saw you and now. So
if you can wrangle this thing into an hour, you've done a good job.
I actually said to my production partner and our videographer Tiernan that there's no way that we're gonna have any problem hitting an hour with you.
No, an hour will not be the problem. I sat down for one of these hour-long conversations with Jake Paluski, and it turned into a 3-hour, 2-episode podcast.
And you know what? That
I've learned a little bit
wouldn't be a problem
from that as well. So I've toned it down a bit.
Well, we just want you to be as vulnerable and candid as you can be, so don't feel like you have to cut yourself off.
Oh, you know me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know me.
So with each of our guests, my favorite place to start with in their lives is childhood. And what their growing up years look like. I think because so much of who we are as people, the foundation of that gets laid when we're young. I feel like it's a really good foundation to kind of start to see where they were as kids and how you became who you are as a person today. So that being said, let's start with your youth. And who Ryan Roth was as a kid.
Oh,
I know
Jesus.
you grew up in a rural environment.
Yeah.
And you've talked about that a lot, and you have a very strong connection to your hometown.
Yeah.
So what do you think you gained living in that kind of environment as opposed to if you would have been a city kid growing up?
Wauseon, Ohio is a very interesting small town. I mean, it's out there, you know. There's not a lot out there. It's a Rockwell painting in a lot of ways, and that's a lot of what my youth was. Had a lot of, I think the neighborhood I grew up in had 12 different kids within a couple years range. I mean, it was a close-knit community. My parents growing up were in a 50s, 60s cover band.
It's very cool.
Yeah, that was cool. So like the front room of my house from the time I can remember was literally a PA set up with my mom's piano, keyboard, dad's guitar, bass, there's a drum set, like that was just the front room. Wauseon for me though was like, I'm an artist. I see things totally different than most of the people out there, and it's not like it's not a bad or good or bad thing. It's just it's a different way of life. You grow roots out there, you stay out there, you grow your family. Like I had to go out to figure out what I was about, you know, and that kind of stuff. But it's a cool little town, man. I lovingly refer to it as Pig's Ass, Ohio.
I was going to ask you about that. I know I've heard you use that term many times.
Yeah.
And you say it's loving.
I say it lovingly, but so Dad worked in the gasket business.
Okay.
Out there, it started off as McCord gaskets, bought by A.E. Clevite. But all along, Dad did work with NASCAR teams, with different stuff like that. So he would have to get the engine builders for like Dale Senior's team, Richard Petty's team, Dick Trickle, his team, and a lot of, I know, right? All these different guys would fly into Detroit to meet with their manufacturers. So they'd meet with the Ford guys, and then they'd send them out to the feeder factories to get their components and parts for the racing season. In that process, Dad would have to explain how to get from the Detroit airport to Wauseon, Ohio. And he'd basically say, just drive south till you hit Toledo, then go west until you come to the Pig's Ass. So all the NASCAR guys started calling it Pig's Ass, Ohio. And it just stuck. And like when I was growing up, Dad used to tell me, like, you know, you're going to have to leave Pig's Ass. There's really nothing for you here. You're going to have to go find yourself, out there somewhere else.
Yeah.
And like, I do love the place. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great community. But I was always like, no, I got to get down to Toledo. I got to,
Yeah.
just there's more for guys like me out this way and out there, than there is out here. So
I get that with that environment. Talking about your parents and the whole 50s, 60s, 70s cover band, I know that you said that your parents heavily influenced you as an artist and a musician. Yeah. So what aspects of your craft in both the arts and music realm hold touches of your parents' influence?
Well, my mom, and she'll correct me when I'm wrong, but I want to say, like, around the time she was 6 years old, she was a classically trained pianist and was doing shows and playing in churches and she was good and could have made a wonderful career as a pianist had she been able to go with that route.
Okay.
Without telling too much of her story, she ended up in the medical field. And in that process, I came along. But she's one of the most talented pianists I know. Can read music and play it right now. I mean, there's no practice. She can look it, boom, gone. And but at the same time, she was a preacher's kid. My grandfather was a Lutheran minister.
Okay.
And her mom was a school teacher, so it was a very strict household that she came in. So she had that natural rebellious in the 70s kind of. So she was into Queen and ELO, and like she was a rocker through and through. I think she's seen Megadeth, Metallica, and Anthrax multiple times.
That is awesome.
She's a big metalhead.
Yeah.
Big Maiden fan. Like, she loves the classical riffs and stuff like that. Can appreciate, the classical side of that musical writing and stuff. So, like, she was very much, like, pushing that kind of, like, check out Queen and check out Freddie Mercury and check out Bowie and check out, like, this 70s rock scene. My dad, on the other hand, had a stack of records that was all of every Woody Guthrie album there was, a bunch of Lead Belly, a bunch of Dave Bromberg records, Dylan's entire catalog, and all these Townes Van Zandt, all these Texas songwriters that nobody up here knows about, at the time and talking to. So like that's what I, them old 1970s speakers and the big sound systems with the headphones that look like Mickey Mouse ears, you know, that like that's what, 2 years old, 4 years old, I was in the dark just listening to these old songwriters, and John Prine and Chris Christopherson and, Johnny Cash and Willie and all that kind of stuff, just, sitting in Wassian listening to all these storytellers tell about the world, and life experiences. And like, that's really kind of where my foundation grew. As the stories go, I was always drawing on the walls. As much as it's a pain for parents and they yell at their kids, I was always encouraged to continue to draw and continue to create. And like even young, they put me in positions where I could be an artist and explore that. And, when I got into school, like I struggled in school when it came to math and the sciences, which is weird because I'm a science geek. It's just the structure of school teaching I couldn't do.
I get that
and
a lot.
Especially for 20, 30 years ago, it's much different than it is now in individual teaching plans and stuff like that. But so I struggled. I was the middle kid out of like 123 kids in my graduating class. I was the 67th kid, I was the middle kid, straight C student, like just did enough to get by. But like I would take my study halls and go down and go back into the art room and create and paint. By the time I was a senior, I had already done everything, so I was making my own. Like I had surpassed what they were able to teach me, so I was taking my own studies at that point, getting myself ready to go to an art school. So
you strike me as the kind of person who, traditional learning environment be damned, is someone who is hunger for knowledge and constantly seeking after it. So when it doesn't surprise me that you would have struggled academically, but still just been hungry and constantly seeking to learn more.
I just never saw the point of the facts they were teaching. And not the understanding behind it. I don't need to memorize the facts I can look up. I need to know the whys, the what fors. I need to know what it smelled like, what it tasted like, what it felt like, and that's That's why I always struggled in school. I just couldn't get attached to what they were teaching. Now, there were a handful. I could tell you the 3 teachers, that in a couple different ways. I had an English teacher, Mr. Meeker, that truthfully knew what I was from the beginning. From the moment he met me, he knew what I was and encouraged me to be that. And that's a writer and it's a storyteller. And, and he was probably the most, in that school atmosphere that guided me in the right way and kind of encouraged me to be that and to know that, it's okay to be that, not be that, but just to be that. So
it sounds like you were very much primed to be able to become your own person. It sounds like your parents were incredibly supportive of who you were and who you were becoming, and encouraging and fostering those artistic endeavors. And that's always helpful when you have educators who are more concerned, less concerned about getting you to test well.
I concerned a lot of educators along the way. Yeah, there's a few that will tell some stories, but it's a weird time. Being a dad now, my kids are that age. It's interesting watching them go through it, looking back on my time at that age and saying, "Oh, that's just youth," or "No, that's messed up." That's
right.
This is, I went through that, or "No, this is something I didn't go through," and this, it's. You look back on that time differently. I didn't know nothing. Now that I look back, now and thought I did, but didn't,
I think that's everybody though. I think when you're younger, you think you know more than what you actually know. And the older you get, you realize, wow, I don't know anything.
I wake up every day telling myself now, and it may be the guru I've been listening to, but it's like I don't know. I wake up thinking I know absolutely nothing, and I'm questioning everything for the first time, and that's kind of how I approach stuff now. But it took a long time to get to that.
Sure.
To get to that point.
So without fully getting into the nitty-gritty of all of your life experiences, you've described your life as a 45-year destination-less journey.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little more about what you mean when you say that?
Some people, when they're in high school, know exactly what they're going to do with themselves, and they are doing that from the moment they're a young man until the moment they're laid in the clay. And they know, I want to be this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to be a construction worker. I'm going to be whatever is in their hearts. They know that's what they're going to be. They become that instantly. They grow to a point within that. And then they just do that in a linear fashion from point A to point B, from birth to death. I've never been on that path. It goes into all of the mediums I work in. It's hard for me to choose one of those paths and say, this is what I am. There's too much to experience in life for me to say, this is the one job I'm going to do for 60 years. I'm gonna get my pension and I'm gonna do it. No, there's way too much. I have too many interests in too many different things. I have too many talents, too many hobbies, too many, whatever, to not go, okay, I'm going to explore this for a little while and see what's there, and then go, all right, that's cool. What's over here?
Somehow that doesn't surprise me, because you strike me as the type of person that is way more interested and concerned about the journey rather than the destination, and what you're going to gain from the journey, and trying to be in the moment with things. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, we all know what the destination is. We just walk around like it ain't the destination.
Right.
We're trying to trick ourselves to act like death ain't the end. And so that plays a lot into that, right? Like, so we're just tricking ourselves. So I want to experience as much in this time. We've had way too many of my friends in the last 5 go. Yeah. Quick, I don't know. Could happen for me tomorrow. Smoked way too many cigarettes over my time. You know what I mean? I want to experience as much as that as I can. And it is about the journey. Because if I say that, I'm this, and this is what I am, this is what I always be, then I've set that marker, I've set that altar, and that's what I come to every day. That's where I stop. That's what I am. And my life just becomes that.
I could see how that you had that belief, it would be very limiting. It's
Yeah,
a very limiting
to me,
belief
it's very
because
limiting.
it's kind of like you're pigeonholing yourself.
Yeah. It really is, and it becomes repetitive. It becomes monotonous. You're doing the same thing every day, and at that point, you're programmed. You're not experiencing what life is meant to be. We are a very precious thing on this planet, and life is to be experienced. We're here to experience this life. Our consciousness will live on, whatever your belief is. But we're here, we're now, it's meant to be this experience. We're meant to experience it in full. And yes, that is the entire journey. We're setting destinations and marking points way too early in our existences and saying, yep, this is life. This is what life is, and no, life is a great many of things. There's 8 billion of us on this planet experiencing a different reality. There's a lot of different viewpoints. There's a lot of different ways to experience reality and to experience this life. So yeah, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to get up and see and get out and go and
So let's talk about a piece of your identity that I feel like I can confidently say is probably the one that gives you the most fulfillment and brings you the most pride. So when I asked you how you wanted to be introduced today, the very first descriptor that you gave me was father.
Yeah.
Which to me says, one, that is such a strong part of your identity, and probably the one that makes you the most proud and gives you the most fulfillment. So it sounds like you have 4 incredible children.
I do.
Yeah, I know a little bit of the background about all of them. First of all, I just want to give you the platform to be able to brag about your kids for a minute and share a little bit more about them, because I know each of them has their own special story.
Yeah, they do. First of all, I haven't always been the greatest companion, but I try to be the best father to them as I can. I do have 4. Eli is my oldest. He's 17 now, goes to St. Francis. Dude is crushing it.
That's awesome.
He's a manager at Rudy's Hot Dog, which is cool. He's been
cool.
there for a little over a year, getting some good experience that'll carry him, Yeah. So he'll have some college done by the time he gets there, and he's a smart kid. Honestly, I think if you took all my grade point averages from my senior year and added them up, it is not what he carries in a semester. You know what I mean? So he truthfully just understands. He's able to thrive in that environment. He does great. He'll go on to do great things. He's got a heart of gold.
That's not surprising, and I feel like he very much got that from you, because when I think of you, I think of somebody who has very pure intentions and just generally has a very good heart.
I'll give a lot of Eli's credit to his mom too. He's got a lot of his mom in him.
That's awesome.
When you look at her and I, he's a good mix of the two of us. He's the best of us in a lot of ways. And that's really cool. So yeah, definitely he's got a good mix of both. And now the next one, Ash.
Yeah.
Ash is absolutely me reincarnated while I'm still alive somehow. It's this weird thing. Ash goes to Notre Dame, but because they don't have the sports teams that others do, she marches for St. John's.
Okay.
Drum and marching and inline drumming as well.
Very cool.
Ash strictly has better rhythm than I do and better timing than I do as a musician.
Sure.
Plays 5 different instruments. I think I have that right. Maybe a 6th in there.
Wow.
Plays guitar better than I do. Plays oud, can play violin. Good drummer on a kit and, on inlines. Just very, very talented. Can pick up musical instruments and just get it right away.
Very cool.
Has had poetry published. Is a good songwriter. I'm about to record her coming up. As soon as I can get her into a studio, it's very much like watching myself. To me, my dad passed away when I was in my 20s. So, I remember up to that point in my relationship with my father, and he was always my biggest muse, and is the reason I write and play and perform and, that kind of stuff. But I see myself now in his shoes, looking down on a younger version of myself and thinking, man, what aspect of that was I able to glean from, and what what didn't I get that I can help with, you know, what encouragements, what, you know. So it's been cool. Ash came out trans a little over a year ago. That's been very, very interesting to watch because Ash struggled for years.
Really?
I watched that kid go from being like the strongest kid to broken and not know why. Have some suspicions, but not know why until the day she came out to me and came out, you know, was like, dude, I just feel, this is what I feel. And you often wonder as a parent, you know, what happens if my kid's gay, or what happens if my kid, you know, how am I going to react? And like in that moment, I was like, well, you know how to react. You love your kid. Like, and that's all I could do was love my kid. And that's all I've done from that day is just be as supportive as I can and try to understand. And we have open and honest conversations. There's parts of it I understand, parts of it I don't. Parts of it I'm like, well, that's not that. That's actually just normal living. Like this part of it I even suffer from, or, you know, you'll find this in any relationship, or you'll find, but then there's parts of it that I don't understand, and we were able to talk about that, and that helps me with my friends. It helps me with my neighbors. It helps me, you know, it helps me understand people. And
so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If there's any piece of advice that you could give other parents that are also navigating the journey of helping their child come to terms with this, what piece of advice would you give other parents?
It ain't about you.
I love that.
Love your kid. Just be there for your kid. Love your kid. I get you may not understand it. It may go against many a belief that you hold. But that's your kid. Love your kid. Listen to your kid. And do what's right. You know, if that means, and honestly, that means either be there for them or don't be there for, don't be toxic. Just don't be toxic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And don't add to anything that they're already struggling with. Because you don't understand what they're going through.
Gosh, it's kind of making me get emotional because
it does me. Like, I mean, honestly, because I watch her struggle with it. Where, you know, there's parts of it that I'm like, yeah, that's being a kid, and there's parts of it I'm like, oh man, that's tough. I don't know. I don't know how you would get through that. I don't know how my trans daughter walks down the street and deals with the stuff. I don't understand how a black person in some areas walks down the street. I don't understand how a Mexican American can walk down the street. Like, there are environments I don't get. Like, as even a human being, I don't get why we're here still. You know what I mean? So to watch your kid struggle with that, it's one thing if I'm struggling with it. To watch your kid struggle with it. And what's been great though is her, him, they. Yeah. And again, this is evidence that I struggle with it myself. I ask her all the time, you have to understand where I'm coming from. And she's like, I do, you know, like, and that's what it is. It's we have an understanding, and once you have an understanding, you're able to navigate anything else that comes along with it. So yeah, well, it's been great watching her though, be that broken, and then see Ash now, who is now just, dude, she was great in this play. That's awesome. Like, just goofing off on stage and going down and competing at state and finding her tribe and finding her people and not coming out like now that's a cliche, but stepping out as himself, just being comfortable with who they are and going, this is who I am and I'm happy about it. If you're not cool, I get it, cool, just stay away from me, you know, like, and don't be toxic.
Well, I have to compliment you on your parenting because honestly, I think all kids at the end of the day just want to feel loved and supported by their parents.
That's it.
I think that's why it just gets me so much because
I just want to be heard. Dude, they're people.
Exactly.
They're people. They have thoughts. They have emotions. They're trying to figure this world out. And we as adults like to act like we have things figured out, and we don't.
Yeah.
Like, we're all just trying to trick each other into believing that we know what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we're trying to convince them. But then I got a 12-year-old Nora.
Yeah.
She's a Spitfire. She's figuring herself out. You know, she's at that age where she's just starting to figure herself out. So it'll be interesting to see where she grows and how she goes. She's got a good heart too. she's got her own talents that she will put to use one day. And then there's Matilda,
Yeah.
my COVID baby.
Yes. So Matilda had a very harrowing entrance into this world, and you were very, very open on social media about what that experience was like for you. And one of the things that stood out to me was just the number of times that you noted how strong your partner was through that.
Yeah.
And really just calling out the strength that it takes to deal with what you guys were dealing with.
Yeah.
So one, if you would talk about that experience and just kind of explain to people who maybe don't know what happened through all of that, what that was like. And then I would love to know where you were able to find your strength during that time to keep pressing forward.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I do have a 1-year-old daughter. We don't post much about her on social media.
She's very cute.
I'll show you some pictures when we're
adorable.
done. Just because with the way social media is and with the way everything, like, I'm trying to protect her as much as I can and keep her off of that and pure as long as I can. And that lead comes from Sandy, and I will look. I'm on record right now on video, dude. She's doing a great job raising Matilda.
That's awesome.
I have no complaints with what's going on with Matilda. I have nothing but the utmost respect and love for Sandy and what she went through just a little bit over a year ago, and still going through there. She's still dealing with some things and some side effects of that have put her at risk going forward. And Matilda's still dealing with stuff, but they went through a 49-hour labor, natural.
Wow.
Yeah, and during the process, come to find out that the cord had wrapped around Matilda's neck, and so we had to have an emergency C-section, which once we got Matilda out, it was clear that she was going to have to go to the NICU for a minute. But at that point, it just looked for not long just to check her out. Sandy had the C-section closed up. During recovery, she ended up rupturing a hematoma and darn near bleeding out while Matilda was in the NICU. And then it kind of became quick that she was going to have to go on the respirator and they were going to have to get her lungs out. She was battling some infections and was dealing with something we couldn't quite figure out what. And honestly, it wasn't until a couple months ago that we finally got that figured out. It's been a long year of like trying to figure out what was going on with Matilda. So we ended up 10 days in the NICU, long story short, and it was, no woman should ever have to go through what she went through. And I won't go too long into that, but there's just a lot there that just isn't right with how we're bringing babies into the world, and what a woman shouldn't have to scream to be heard.
Yeah.
In those situations, they shouldn't have to fight that hard just to be heard for healthcare and to be listened to by a doctor. It shouldn't be. I don't know what we do about that, but it shouldn't be that way.
Unfortunately, a lot of times I think patients have to be their own best advocate.
They have to be their own best advocate these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to know what you're doing. You have to know your body. You have to know. At this point, you damn near have to become a doctor yourself and know yourself. But you should anyway. You should know your body. You should know your vessel, and you should listen to it. And you shouldn't have to yell that hard to have somebody else listen to you. So yeah, during that process, there was just a lot of ups and downs. And it was during the heart of COVID. So at that point, we were secluded in the hospital, couldn't have anybody in or out.
That had to have added
family.
an element of stress to it on top of everything else.
It does. It absolutely does, because it does cut you off from your support system. And it was just the two of us in the hospital trying to figure this out. And I've had three other kids years ago. Some seasoned vet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know what I'm doing. I've cut a cord. Played with the placenta after they left it in the room. Never leave me in that situation again. But I knew what to expect, right? But there was nothing in my experience had prepared me for that. And honestly, sitting in the NICU holding Matilda, looking around the room at 17, 18, 19, 22-year-old men and women who at this point could be my children, going through the same thing. I had 44 years of life experience to dwell on, you know what I mean, and pull from.
Yeah.
They didn't. I don't know how they were getting through. You know, I pulled a couple to the side and we're talking to a couple of them, but I don't know how they were making it, you know. And there was one point I found myself in the chapel at St. V's, which is honestly a beautiful room. It's the only quiet place in the hospital. And I wasn't there like on no religious nothing. I just was looking for a quiet place that I could break down. And I looked up and there's this like mosaic tile with Jesus being held by Mary, like after he comes down from the cross, and he just looks broken and dead. And I mean, the resemblance is striking. So I'm looking up at this thing like, God, if I ever felt like that, like no shit, you know. And I pull out my phone and I put on some Tom Waits, Tom Trobert's Blues, 3 Sheets to the Wind. And it just starts off, and like the hook is waltzing Matilda, waltzing, you know, it's that little bit of hook. And the lyrics just could not have been any more like synchronized and on point with that moment. And as it's playing loud on my phone and ringing out in this little cathedral, I just thought to myself, like, I broke down. And at that moment, you just stand up and go, all right, we got it, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do but go do what you have to do, you know. And that's what it was. And it was a hell of an experience. I wish that on no one. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, please reach out to me. There are people out there that had gone through similar situations. Friends of mine that I didn't know, like I know their kids, and I didn't know they were 19, 20 weeks in a NICU unit. Some of them a couple months in a NICU unit, a couple days in a NICU unit. And a lot of those men reached out like, we don't talk about this much, but yeah, we went through this, man. If you need anything, dude, I just need to know you got through it. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm more than happy to be that for any young buck coming up, you know, so, yeah.
I'm glad she's doing
yeah, in the
better
meantime,
now.
dude, she's great, starting to talk, walk, get around, like she's running around. She's a handful for Sandy. She is, she's a Roth baby. And she's honestly, again, she's probably the best of both of us.
That's awesome.
Very smart. She talks to crows, which is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, she feeds birds every morning in her
Does she?
routine, and they talk to her, and she talks back. It's cool. She's great. She's a beautiful little girl. Could not be more proud to be her father. I do everything I can for her, as I do my other kids.
That's
you know?
Awesome. So let's talk about your other love, art and music.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
So let's start with art. So as I mentioned at the beginning in your intro, you work with multiple mediums.
I do.
Right now, I kind of want to focus in on the sculpting
Yeah,
aspect of
yeah,
things. Yeah, so you work with
That's the fun stuff.
ice, pumpkins, wood, bone, clay, sand, and food.
Yes.
Is that right? Did
Yeah.
I cover
That's
all
the main-
of them?
that's the main 7.
The main ones. All right.
Yep.
So I've seen your
Appropriate.
work in each of these categories, and the thing that has always stood out to me is the intricacy of each of the pieces. So can you walk me through what your creative process looks like from idea conception to project completion?
It's 50-50 on whether or not I know what I'm doing or don't know what I'm doing before I step up to the medium.
Yeah.
Like there's some stuff that is on me to figure out what to do, and I get to do whatever I want for a client. There is some stuff where this is what they've ordered, this is what they're looking for. So there's a little bit of difference of prep work in that, but it essentially comes down with transferring an idea onto a medium, and then it is very much like Michelangelo when they asked him about how he carved David. It's, look, he's inside. Everything I carve is inside of there. I just have to remove everything that isn't that.
That's a really interesting and really good way to look at
Yeah,
it.
so if it's inside of this shape and I'm going to carve a flower out of that, well, I know I need to remove everything that isn't the stem and leaves, and then I need to just sculpt my flower down from there. So there's different ways to look at it. I've definitely started to look at the world in a 3D way. It's tough for me to paint these days because I can't get the depth, and I'm definitely now a 3D sculptor. all of them, you can actually, they're both additive and subtractive mediums.
Yeah.
So I can put ice back together, I can freeze it back together if the conditions are correct, and begin then to sculpt. I can do the same with pumpkins. You can super glue pumpkin back together.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can super glue. So like if I'm doing a face, a lot of times I'll take, if I'm not using chunks of another discarded pumpkin, when we gouge out the eye sockets, it creates this little scoop. I can turn that around and glue it just under here and get a little bit more depth on the nose.
Very cool.
So, and at that point, and again, it's really just, okay, here's my image. I draw my lines onto it. So then I'm just pushing back for depth. The medium determines the depth.
Sure.
Ice, you know what you're looking at. You can do a lot of things with it. It's, no pun intended, cool as hell.
I do have a question for you about the ice carving, okay?
Yep.
So with the other mediums that you work with, depending on the medium, there's a certain amount of permanency to it once you've finished it. So with ice, I know you do have the opportunity to refreeze sometimes, but how do you emotionally go into that situation with some of them, knowing that it's going to be so intricate and that within a certain number of hours, your hours and hours of work could literally be a puddle on the ground?
Oh, I love this question. Honestly, this is my favorite question. I'm asked 3 questions everywhere I go sculpting, and that is, what do I do for a living? Because they don't believe that a man can make a living, let alone make a living and pay child support as an artist, as a demo sculptor, you know? And it's a lot of that. That usually comes from the women. The men ask a lot of tool-oriented questions. You know, what kind of chainsaw are you using? What's on that die grinder? You know, are those special bits? Like, where do you get your stuff? And a lot of it are custom made, you know? So those are that. And then it's that question, like, don't you feel bad that this melts or that pumpkin rots? Or what are they doing with that sand carving when you guys are done? And I'm like, oh, they'll leave it up for a couple days and then they're gonna knock it down with a bulldozer and dump it in a field. Everything I touch outside of stone, and even stone, will deteriorate, depending on what your version of time is.
Sure.
Or what scale you look at time. I look at every one of these pieces as an individual moment that is, it's a spring flower. It's going to be here for a week, and then it's going to be gone, and it's here to be appreciated in that moment. It's to be photographed, and the story will be told about it after that. But each one of those is a moment. It's an interaction with the people that are there watching it. It's an interaction with the crew I'm working with. It's an interaction. That's why I do what I do. It's sitting at the table across some of the greatest artists in pumpkins, ice, and sand from across the country, and having dinner with them after we've worked all day on individual pieces and going, man, I really like how you do that. How'd you do that technique? You know, or like, and swapping stories and you know how it is as a musician. Absolutely. When we get together, like, man, I really like, what chords are you using there? Like, man, I really like how that hook, how that came together. I like how you took that line or that thought process and spun it around, you know? And it's those conversations. It's the show, right? Where you have a conversation afterwards with a fan or a friend or, you know, whatever you call them. And, you know, that's it. I know everything I do I'm going to die. Appreciate me while I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, I tell all the people all the time, like, I've got stuff you can buy, but I've got nothing to sell you. Like, there's stuff that I do that I make. Yeah. But what we're doing here it's these moments. It's the appreciation of something. It is like we're out in Perrysburg and people are coming out and they're up and downtown looking at us and they're like, oh my God, you know, there's an 8-foot Bigfoot down here. Like, oh my, what is, like, it's their faces. It's the look on the kids' faces. It's making them see that, wow, you can do this. You know, like, oh, there's this hobo that's carving cool stuff. Like, I don't know. I do it. That's why I do it. It isn't for like because something I will do will last. The only thing we have that lasts are ideas and the things we can pass on of our consciousness onto our youth. It's the principles. It's the idea. It's the example. Look, this building right here will be gone in 2 generations. It will crumble in on itself. You know, like, we have towns where there were no towns, and grass where there were towns. You know, like it's humanity. Like I'm not too concerned that anything I do is going to last, because it's not.
Wow.
I'm not here to build the pyramids. You know, like that'd be cool. Yeah, it'd be
you could
cool.
totally carve one. But...
I could.
So you do a lot of commissions. Is there any particular commission that you've done that you're especially proud of over the years?
Man, I don't know. That's tough.
Is it?
Everyone. Anybody who's asked me to do a piece of art where I love doing, like, I work with Ice Creations a lot throughout the year. They have been very good to me for over a decade. Chad, dude, I love Chad. He's the master at it. And so I'm hired in by those guys to do a lot of it, you know, but that's all client-based. That's all that kind of stuff. But when somebody, like, I know calls me up, it's like, hey, man, I got this tree stump. Or, hey, man, I saw that clay sculpture you did, or the mushrooms. Like, how much are they? Like, dude, could you paint me one like that? Or could you paint my cat? I'm like, yeah, I'll paint your cat like a cartoon. I don't, you know, whatever. Like, it's that kind of stuff. And again, that has more to do with the relationship and just doing something for somebody you know and something you like, and somebody, or even like somebody called me up and be like, hey, so I was talking to so-and-so and they said, you're the guy to talk to for this. I'm less proud of the fact that, hey, they're coming to me for the job than I am that my buddy recommended recognize that I can do stuff, you know, because I quietly go, I don't promote myself in too much of a way.
You don't seem, I would agree with that. Just from watching your posts about your work on Facebook, it's more you just presenting the work as this is the work and less about repping it and pushing it.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the stories and about what they mean or why I did it or what I learned during the process, but I very seldom will be like, hey man, I'm this guy. Like I walked into Six Fifths a while back and this guy comes up, he's like, you're our ice sculptor. And as soon as he said, you're our guy, I was like, oh man, I'm somebody's guy. Like I'm this thing now. And it was weird. And like, I was like, yep, that's me. But you live on the other side of town. That's cool. Because he knew I live in Perrysburg. Like it came out. Like he's like, oh, you're our very hometown guy. And I'm like, oh, dude, I live on like, you don't claim this out of town I live on. Like I'm in the trailer park, bro. We're in a different tax bracket. But he was cool as heck. But it was just weird being recognized like that. And like, I don't know. I always find that weird. You're
such a humble guy anyway. I feel like I'm going to make an assessment. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But I have a feeling for you that it is painful to a certain extent anytime you're recognized for anything, just because that's the guy that you are.
It's weird. It is weird.
Yeah.
And like we were talking earlier, I'm always amazed like how they recognize me or why they recognize me. People that I would think recognize me because they've seen me sculpt are like, dude, I saw your show at this hippie fest. I'm like, wait, first of all, you were at a hippie fest? Like, and then like people who like I wouldn't even think at all. Like I'll run into people in other cities and towns and be like, oh, I saw you at this town. Or I'll run into people in Alpena, Michigan and be like, oh, you're from Ohio. You know what I mean? It's like weird stuff like that. And the more and more you travel and get around and do this stuff, you get recognized, you know, it's in weird places. And
I'm sure.
It's why I hide everything and all this hair and sunglasses and bandanas. But then
it's
now,
a whole vibe.
Yeah, even now that's become recognized. So I'm gonna have to change this all up at some point. I'm going to prayer robes, turbans, and mala beads next.
Well, before we delve into the musical portion of who you are, I want to talk about the religious spiritual realm because I feel like that has probably had an influence on your music. So I want to tackle that first. The thing that stood out to me when you shared your story with me that I know we talked briefly about before, but it had completely slipped my mind, was the fact that you were preaching and leading worship for a decade.
Yeah.
And one that doesn't surprise me because sometimes when I listen to you talk, you're such a relational, how we need to relate to other people. That kind of, for me, plays into the whole preacher aspect of things.
Yeah.
And so my first question to you is, how did you get into that in the first place? And at one point, did you see that as being the path that your life was going to ultimately take? Yeah, this is interesting because truthfully, the two are really, really, really woven in, and it really is woven in the religious, the spiritual side of who I am and the artistic side. Well, also too, some people might not realize that there is a distinction between religion and spirituality.
There is a complete different distinction. Please pick up a dictionary and read a word a day and learn its definition. Like, we've lost the ability to understand word. truthfully. And,
Sure.
and we've changed the meaning of words, and nobody knows what anybody's talking about anymore. But we can't, that's why we're having trouble communicating and have all these misunderstandings. But that's a whole other topic and podcast. But when I entered this world, I died. I can tell you the moment. I remember it. I have total awareness of when consciousness sparked for me in this meat suit. And I've held on to that and retained it my entire life. There are things I see, whatever your belief is, I'll tell you right now, I see things. I've seen the void. I've seen what's on the other side. It's, without going too much into the weird side of that'll be from one of my Stone Prophet podcasts. But we'll get into that later. But it really sent me on a journey, even as a kid, to figure out what this existence as a human being is. So in my youth, I mean, again, I grew up, my grandfather was a Lutheran minister, so he was always, prevalent in my life as an example. In high school, again, being this turbulent concoction of chakra energy, definitely had people speaking and prophesying like the spiritual mantle over my life, and that kind of the cloth, the shepherd's cloth, to be able to be a leader of people and to be a guide. And that's kind of what I was kind of leaning towards when I was kind of in high school, but like I was a heck of an artist, and like I'm this weird mix of conservative, liberal, and like I didn't know what I was, who I was, so honestly the art side won over, and I went to an art school, and for a while that very open, hedonistic, this is Rome, I can just do whatever I want, like I'm out here on my own, doing my thing, and I explored whatever there was to offer in the art world, but it opened my eyes to some things. And when I came back and back to this area, then I got married, and my father had passed away 2 months after I got married, and like that just like totally set me on this, like, man, like I'm dealing with a lot right now. So I did, and I went back into that place. I found a church that I could just be myself at, and met some good people. It's how I met the Rudders.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I led worship with the Rudders. And,
very cool. I did not
that's how
know
I met
that.
Johnny and them, and that's why we're friends to this day. Like,
I went to high school with John.
Yeah, I was with Johnny last night, man, and we was talking about that, how long we've been friends, and
that's awesome.
like, and I started going down that. I could take one class right now and be certified as a pastor, and I couldn't do it, like for a lot of reasons, couldn't do it, couldn't justify some things. I always tell people, some people lose faith because God doesn't show them enough, some because he shows them too much. Faith has never been my problem. I've seen the other side. It's not what's on the other side that concerns me. It's I want the understanding. I want to know I'm a creator.
Yeah.
I see the binary code here. I said read code. Like I want to know like more. So it set me on a different path, and to study in that process, a friend of mine in the faith said, dude, you know what you should do? You should study 3 other religions like hardcore for 6 months before you finish up. And I did. And that's when I started, like I studied some of the Islam, studied Buddhism, studied Judaism, started reading some Hindu, and realized, wow, man, a lot of these guys are telling the same story. We're just changing the names, and one version's a kindergarten version, one's a middle school, one's a high school, and one's a college level, and we're just, you kind of start seeing that, wow, there is a story here, but what is it? And that's really what set me on that journey. And a lot of that does permeate through with the music. I'm way too real for Sunday morning at the local Episcopalian, but too real for some Friday and Saturday nights. Music to me is both. It's a lot of things. I try to be jovial, but I like to dive in deep water. I like to discuss some topics that people don't necessarily sing about and talk about and be real about. My heroes always were those guys. They're drunken poets who are real and open and honest and just raw, and like I have no problem being that guy, and it comes through in the art, it comes through in the music and in the writing, and I try to blow apart cliches. And
Yep,
I mean, I have no
you do.
problem with, I get why they're cliches, but we lose the thought behind the cliche if we don't think about them long enough. So I like to blow them up a little bit so people think about them again.
So would you say, rather than having a complete shift in worldview after parting ways with religion proper, that you haven't necessarily developed a fully different worldview, but it's constantly changing and evolving?
I think it is. I think anybody that sticks to any ism for their entire life, careful Ryan, has lived a limited life. And I'm not saying you have to open yourself to every concept and idea, you have to believe or hold to anything, but you should be open enough to listen, to hear, to realize that it's a big world. And it isn't until the last couple of years that we realize truthfully how big of a world and how many different views. And that offends some people's true core beliefs on every front.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing now is we're seeing this influx of new ideas that offend our core beliefs, that the things we hold on to as crutches to get through the reality that we're on a spinning rock at 200 million miles an hour around a big ball of gas with a black hole in the center of the Milky Way that's going to suck us in at any time, and we're supposed to act like this thing's going to last, right? Like, let's be real about it. Be kind enough, be light enough to sit with somebody else that's got a different philosophy and listen to it. Because 90% of what they believe is actually the same thing you believe. You just put a different face and a different name on it and a different,
Well, I don't know how you feel. I feel like that's kind of the hard part now, because I feel like people oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, people are so defensive and so committed to just like beating someone over the head with their perspective and their opinion and their viewpoint, that the art of the not argumentative conversation, but conversations of growth and learning and being able to sit down and have a discussion knowing that you're on complete opposite ends, but be able to learn from each other and not have it become this hostile thing. So I feel like you're one of those unique people that is able to actually do that. You want to sit down and you want to have the conversation, not to prove yourself right, but to learn.
I wake up every morning thinking I know nothing, like I really have lately. Like I've tried to walk that way in the last year, like to where, all right, I know what I know.
Yeah.
I already know that.
Right.
I woke up knowing that. I woke up believing what I believe. What do you believe? Because I'll be honest with you, I believed a lot of things in my life over 45 years. A couple of them I've held true to. Be good to yourself. Be good to the person across from you. Love each other, man.
Yeah.
Love each other. Those things you hold on to, those things are true. The rest of it, there ain't a whole lot of truth. It's a lot of spin. It's a lot of
Absolutely.
It's a lot of ego. It's a lot of selfishness. And I recognize it in myself. You know what I mean? And that's
Same.
like I wake up trying to strip myself of the capital ego and really try to be a little less of myself and a little more of the hive network and be connected with others.
Yeah.
That's why I love mycelium and mushrooms. It has nothing to do with hallucinogenics. It has to do with the communication and what they truly are on this planet, and the sharing of information from plants to humans and vice versa. They're a great thing to study mushrooms. But there's a lot to learn there, and that's the mentality I have. It's like we are definitely realizing through science and spirituality studies that we are connected, that right now our energies are sharing space.
Yeah.
None of this is actually touching anything. It's all just shared space between negative space. And we are sharing this energy, and our energy right now are producing this conversation. And if we allow ourselves to be open to each other with a better vibration, then we're able to have better conversations. And when we're all out of whack, that's when we have that discourse.
Definitely. Well, Ryan, my deep philosophical friend, let's talk about Ryan the musician. Before we get into talking about the Sideshow, because that's obviously a very important thing we need to talk about, I want to talk about you as an individual musician.
Yeah.
So you are a very talented singer-songwriter. You are along the vein of Americana and folk rock. If I could describe it,
Please do, because I can't.
Yeah, okay. So I feel like if this was a genre, you would fit into gritty musical poet, because when I listen to your songs, you've got that awesome Americana grit in your vibe and your voice, mixed with poetry, with getting people to think on a deeper level, which I think very much plays into who you are and everything in regard to that. So when did you write your very first song, and how has your writing style evolved over the years?
I probably wrote my first song when I was in high school. Surprise, surprise, about some girl. Girls would make a musician out of every young man. You know what I mean?
Women too, and everyone in between.
You know, make a songwriter out of any man. But like the first one I actually truthfully remember like writing was about like Legos.
Perfect.
And I mean, I was pretty much a grown man at this point.
My first was about cookies.
But like looking back, like how cool Legos are and how but I wanted to write a folk song, like a serious folk song, but like just about the dumbest thing I could think of, and it was Legos and how you could do anything with them. But then honestly, it quickly turned to like these, I was a very emotional little shit. And so it was very much that, like me just processing the existence of a emotional, hormonal teen.
Sure.
You know, and you know, they've labeled that stuff emo now and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But that's kind of what it was, you know, and stuff like that. But always had my parents' influences in there, and I spent some time as a singer in a cover band for a long time, but all the time like writing my own stuff, but never thinking I was going to do anything with it until I completely stopped playing music like out in bars and stuff and was doing just the church thing. And when I came back from that experience, it was like, I'm trading the pulpit for the suitcase. Like, I'm going to go do this thing, you know, like I didn't want to do the cover band thing again. Mm-hmm. I figured, dude, I'm getting old. I'm not getting any younger. I just want to be me. I got things to say. I got these songs that when people hear them, they think they're all right. Like, I just want to play those. So booked a couple shows in town and was like, all right, here we go. And then people are like, play this and play that. And I'm like, yeah, no. And then, because I don't know any better, like I don't play for tips.
Right.
I never have. And so I've never felt this need to be like, oh yeah, I'll play that song you want me to play so that you'll put that money in that jar.
Right.
It's never been my motivating factor. I appreciate it. I like it.
Sure.
If somebody puts a tip jar out for me,
bonus.
I'll throw a couple bones out there. So like, and I try to be courteous to crowds, but at the end of the day, I'm a singer-songwriter, and like that's what I want to do. It's what I want to be. It's what I am. Like, if 2 people show up, cool. If 100 people show up, cool. I don't care. I'd be doing this at home. You know, I don't care. It's what I do. The fact that people have a well enough opinion of what I do that they are willing to offer me U.S. backed currency to come in and you know, get rowdy in their establishments. Then yeah, like, I love doing it. But that's not why I do it. So it's never been my motivating factor. So that's why you see Craig and I approach it the way that we do. And like, you know, you were here when we started doing it. You have a handful of the OGs, right, who did original music, but they've always done what they do. They've like, and I just kept, we came back, I saw so many of you writing your own stuff, but who were all in cover bands, but not doing their own stuff. And I loved that conversation with all of us at that time. Like, what are we doing? Like, what?
Yep.
I want to hear, no. Yeah, that was cool, but hey, remember that song you wrote? And that's what I loved about like those Dirty Bird songwriter nights and stuff like that.
Those
came
were
out
so
of there.
awesome.
Those were so important.
Yes.
Like, and that's what people don't understand is how important those were to what's going on right now.
They're important too from the standpoint of, I think about the rounds that I did at the time. I was still pretty fresh into the playing out proper scene, and I still remember both of the rounds that I was in. I was with people who had been doing it so much longer than I had. So much more seasoned, so much more experience, heart in the right. I feel fortunate because the ones that I was paired with, heart in the right place kind of people. So like the Jeff Stewarts, and one of the rounds that I did was with Jeff and Kyle White, and for me, I have found, still at this point, the more nervous I am in a situation, it usually means that I'm with people that I have something to learn with. So I agree with you from the standpoint that as someone who is very new to the scene, I feel like it made me grow a lot.
Yeah, and like I really liked that group of people. Like it's a
great group of people.
I love the musicians in this town. I have so much respect. And look, we all have our strengths, our weaknesses,
Definitely.
our faults, look. There's not one of us that probably hasn't upset one of us. We haven't crossed each other at some point.
We're very emotional people.
We're a bunch of divas.
We really are.
But at the end of the day, like I was with a bunch of them yesterday at Catfest, and like there's a lot of love and respect here, and you don't see it often in other places. From what I hear from traveling musicians and artists, and I'm very fortunate to be in this community, to be in it at that time where we could come in and just be us.
Oh gosh, yeah,
and not
absolutely.
be like run out by bars or by cover bands who are saying, yeah, tell those guys that are playing their own shit to get out of here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like there was just this lot of love, and like I know I say a lot of things about cover bands and this and that. They probably get misconstrued. I love them. I respect them. It's just not what I do.
As a cover artist, I
do it. I play cover songs.
Exactly. I have respect for both ends because it's an art form on both sides. It's just kind of like which one do you want to commit to more? And that's really all it boils down to. When we talked to Big C in the first episode, we talked about that, and that's really what it is it's just, honestly finding what vein you want to be in at any given point.
I find that truthfully and I was thinking about this. I saw one of Jake Paluski's posts or one that he commented on, and it got talking about like the cover band versus the original, or the copy versus the original, and I see it in every aspect of art. And I guess I have a point of view that kind of comes around from every of them. You have people that are the creators, and often those people's concerns, motivations, and driving factors is not fiscal. So they're just focused on the energy of creating. And then you have those that are about the fiscal. Look, this is my job. This is what I do. This is how I make a living. This is how I feed my family.
Yeah.
And in that, their goal is to recreate and reproduce something that is manufacturable. It's the problem with capitalism. That gets to be the mindset. So what they do is just a reproduction of everything. Their talent is there. They can do it, but they don't put the energy, time, and focus and meditation into the creation, and I mean the innovation, the truly pushing of things. It just gets to be, okay, I just have to repeat this same thing over and over and over again, and I'm going to walk out with the same result. I'm going to get the same $200 a night and the same within $12 on a tip jar, and that's going to be my 5 nights, and I can plan that. I can live off that. I can feed off that. Then you got me who's over here like, whatever, you want to pay me? Cool, I'm just going to go write this song, or I'm going to be over here whittling on this piece of wood. And you have this thing in between them where they're like, I'm right, or I'm right. And it's like, no, you're both wrong. Like, you need this, you need one, because without these guys covering something, well, who they're covering? They're covering these guys.
Right.
There has to be this, like, beautiful balance. And, like, Ace and I were talking about, I want to do a project where I'm covering artists in Toledo. And I just put out a cover album, their stuff, just to show that, look, I ain't against covering it. In fact, I'm going to cover all of you who I've been having this conversation with. Like, dude, I love it. There's so much talent in this town. How can you look down on somebody just because they do something differently or they approach something different?
I completely agree.
Yeah, I don't know.
So let's talk about the Sideshow, okay? So I was privileged to be at your album release party for Unbuckle.
That was dope.
Yes,
that was a good day.
That was incredible. So for those that have not heard the Sideshow, can you allow me to give y'all like a quick musical review of describing what you guys are? Okay.
Then I'll have this that I can read. I can write it down when I watch this again. And
wonderful. Okay.
Put it on my bio.
So I was thinking it again today when I was re-listening through to the album. So the vibe that you guys have with your music is it's kind of like listening to this raucous bar fight that immediately ends and results in hugs all around. And then after that, everybody lights up a joint and has a deep introspective conversation. So that being said, would you agree with that?
That is exactly what the Sideshow is like. And here's the problem, and you are exactly right. That is a description of a night with the Sideshow. And we get blamed for it. Like somehow we are the cause of this, or like we're the ones starting it. No, it's what the universe provides when we walk in. And
it's the energy behind it.
It's the energy behind it. Like for Acoustic for Autism, we were talking about like, oh, we're gonna have this great set. It's gonna be good energy, and we're standing outside waiting for Joe Woods to get off so we can go on with the instruments in hand, and a guy comes flying out the bar at our feet wanting to fight the bouncers. And I'm like, for the record, Joe Woods started this bar fight. I didn't. Like, that was Joe's raucous. Give him the reputation, you know, like, I don't know how I've gotten the rowdy reputation I have. I mean, I know I talk about it like that we're rowdy, but we are high energy. Like, we definitely rock two wheels on the track at once. Like, look, we already are well aware we're not the prettiest. We're not the cleanest. We don't smell the best. We're not the big show. You know, we're not the flying trapeze. We're not the lion tamer. We ain't even the clowns. We're not even that good. We're the bearded lady, the sword swallower, the chicken boy. You know, I lived much of my life behind caution tape cages, doing the demonstration art, keeping kids safe away from my tools. I get on stage, it's the same thing. We're just this thing people are looking up at. I feel like a sideshow freak. And because there's a piece of me in all of that, and all those characters, and the strong man, and all, you know, all that. Like, that's what it is. It's the sideshow, and it's a revolving band of freaks that come along beside me. I mean, Craig is downright since day one. He's been the sideshow. Brett's right there. Sam was with us for a while. Sam's back out doing his solo stuff, and dude, I love him. Follow Sam Dell. And then when we go record or we put bigger shows on, I'll grab any of y'all that are in town. And there's a big group of guys who know, like, we're working on a couple records right now.
That's awesome.
And they know who's coming into the studio with me to cut them. Like, I just love using the talent here. I can sing, I can play a couple chords. But when you grab up some of these guys in town and girls who are just some of the most talented people that you will find, man, there is some beauty that happens, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. So to kind of tie this thing all up here, I want to talk about a topic that it is very relevant when it comes to you, because I think you so perfectly encapsulate how to bust this stereotype. So I want to talk about toxic masculinity.
Okay.
Because I feel like you are one of those wonderful men who is helping to bust the whole idea of what manliness and masculinity looks like.
That's fair.
And I've only ever known you as a male who seems to have a very healthy grasp of masculinity and self-awareness in the emotion department. So did you, prior to who you are now, have some toxic patterns in that regard that you had to break, or have you always kind of been very well-rounded in this respect and been very self-aware about that?
I have tried to always be well-respected in that manner, you know, and respectful in that manner. Over time, I am not going to tell you that I did not pick up toxic traits, and I can tell you that my greatest and darkest aren't some stuff that I would have never thought I would have done as a human being, and stuff that I've had to really fight demons about in the years after, you know. So it's a mix. I've always been aware of the different energies of masculinity and femininity, and we as a species have stripped the feminine energy completely out of the equation, to the point where we're out of balance. There needs to be a balance. And I'm not saying that that one needs to control the other, because it's not. It needs to be a balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. Either one rule, you have chaos.
Thinking about them working more in harmony as
it
opposed
has
to
be a balance.
opposing each other.
And whether that's, and look, say what you want about DNA, genetics, sexual orientation, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, there's not a human being on the planet right now that is not made up of both a man and a female. Whatever that makes you mixed, you have feminine and masculine energy that created you.
Absolutely.
Show them both the respect they deserve. And I'm on record as joking seriously about the fact that there is one thing in the human experience that men will never be able to share, and that is the ability to give birth and to grow life within you and bring it forth. We will live, we will die. Everything else in between point A and point B is shared existence. We all have sorrow, we all have joy, we all have the full gambit and spectrum of human emotion.
Absolutely.
Accept that. That's
Right.
one thing I could never understand or be in, you know? So I try to understand that perspective. I try to understand what it's like to be a mother and to have that attachment. Because as attached as I am to my kids, it's a different attachment than it is with a mother. It's a different energy. And the
Yeah.
more and more you study ancient civilizations, you realize that, wow, some of these had more matriarchal societies, and they were a little more harmonious. Now they also got their butts kicked because they didn't have the good, like they didn't have enough masculinity. But there's got to be a balance between being able to, you know,
Sure.
stand up and fall down and be like, there is that balance between us. And I think a lot of what we struggle with is that imbalance. I think we struggle with it in our homes, we struggle in it in society, we struggle in it globally. And I think that's something we're going to have to rectify at some point.
Well, just like how masculinity can become toxic, femininity can become toxic too. It's whenever you
Anything
warp
is toxic.
one or the other.
Yeah. Anything, even the most pure intention can become toxic. And we just need to be a better observer of ourselves and each other in that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to compliment you a little bit extensively, and so I am expecting this to make you uncomfortable a little bit because you are who you are. But this is going back again to how humble you are, because it is a characteristic of yours that stands out. I think we live in a world where egos rule, right?
I was all ego for a very long time.
Wow, okay.
I stand here right now, and this is why I'm uncomfortable.
Sure.
Because it's every day I have to shed that ego
Absolutely.
and shed that suit that is self. And dude, I was all ego, youth, all ego,
Really?
all lower chakra, all just primal, you know, me.
Yeah.
I had to realize how toxic I had come to some people that I love before I woke up to what that was. So it's been a long journey. So yes,
Sure.
I am that now, and
Yeah.
I try to be that now, but I didn't wake up that way.
I totally get that. I think a lot of our really, really good parts take developing over a course of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll focus on who you are currently.
I appreciate that.
While also paying respect to who you were and the distance that you've covered.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, you frequently pay homage and respect to those around you that you admire, and often it's in a very emotional way. So once again, shattering the illusion of what it means to be manly and how men should relate with each other. And this is so perfectly encapsulated in a post that you made on Facebook the day after Acoustics for Autism about Big C, who coincidentally was our very first guest.
Yeah, I love that he was the first guest.
I think it is such a poignant example of your humility and the respect that you show others and healthy masculinity that I'd really like to read the post, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, you can do that.
Are you okay with it?
I'm good.
All right.
I don't have to read it, so yeah, you can read it.
All right, so this is the post that Ryan made about Big C the day after Acoustics for Autism. I don't really know how to start the story off other than to say, in my eyes, Big C is the king of the 419. If you've ever seen the man walk down the street or into a room, you have the beginning of the understanding of what I mean. He is a mountain of a man. And for some strange reason, this man has shown me nothing but love from the moment we have met, and I've tried to reciprocate in kind. I got to say the man gives the best hugs in town, and I've tried to hug you all. Well, yesterday, at the peak of the insanity that was Acoustics for Autism, I happened to cross paths with Big C. I saw him from like a mile away. So as I walked up to him, I have my arms open to give him a hug, and as I did, the man bowed to me in front of hundreds of people that stopped what they were doing and were wondering the same thing I was. Why is this big man bowing down to this little gnome hobo of a man? I humbly bowed back and gave him a hug with all the love I could give. That would have been enough, but I passed by him 4 other times throughout the afternoon and evening, and each time he did the same thing, drawing the same reaction from the people around us. I have to admit, I spent some of my evening last night wondering what was that dude doing. Once is one thing, but every time you pass by a person and you do it, it stands out to them. With that still kind of in the back of my mind this morning, something in my morning studies jumped right out at me. Namaste. Not the t-shirt, Not the coffee mug from the basic white Pinterest woman who attends a watered-down yoga class on a Tuesday night at the YMCA, but the meaning at its core. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you, and I bow to it. Or my spirit respectfully recognizes your spirit in love. And that is the closest thing I can begin to explain the amount of respect that I not only have for Big C, but for all of you. This brother had no idea he was teaching me a lesson yesterday, and I appreciate him for doing that. About the only way I know how to show my respect for that is to ask that y'all go check him out when he performs. I promise you will not be disappointed. What made you feel so compelled to share that story with everyone?
A lot of just that, like, right? We, and kind of like you said before, guys don't do too good a job of recognizing and building each other up and just saying, you know what, dude, I appreciate you, and like, dude, thank you. And it does stand out. If he'd have done it once, yeah, it would have stood out and I've been like, oh, that was cool. But when he did it over and over again, that told me there's something here that you're supposed to pay attention to. There's something you need to see here. And dude, I'm Big C's skeleton, bro. I'm like 153 pounds right now. I could climb down his throat and puppet him. Seriously, he is always, and it's been years and years and years that every time we cross paths, he's been nothing but love and respect and tell me he appreciates who I am and what I do. And I maybe it's because I didn't expect it, and maybe that's my own bias and my own, like, oh, I wouldn't have thought he would have liked me, kind of
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, my own insecurities. And so to have that, and then like, it's just been great to kind of get to know him over the years and see him perform and just who he is. He's in a very unique position in the 419, to be honest with you, with his influence in multicultural.
Yes, he is.
Like,
yeah.
He could very well be on this side of town and then be out in the winery tomorrow night.
That's right.
Influencing a whole other demographic of people, and then 2 nights later being out with like that whole group. That's why I love Distant Cousins. They have no idea what they're actually doing. Or maybe they do. And
classy guys too, like across the board.
Dude, I love every one of those guys, and like that's it, and that's why I respect them, and that's why like every time I see the entourage, I pay respect to them because, dude, they're doing something I couldn't do. I can't reach crowds like they do. I can't reach the people they do. I can't reach, and they're doing it in love. They're doing it the right way.
Absolutely.
They're doing so. Yeah, namaste, man. I absolutely recognize that, and I see that, and I wish I could be more like that. And why aren't we more doing it? Like, so yeah, Big C's a big example of that. So yeah, why not, man? Why not show that love to people? I try to do that for everybody as I go around. I got Fish on my arm.
Yeah.
Him and I have gotten real close over the years, and dude, I love that dude like a brother. And
that's awesome.
Dude, there's so many people like that in town that you come across, and you see enough. There's a lot of love and a lot of respect.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for doing this. You are
Thank you.
You are kind and humble and a wonderful person to talk to. I'm so glad that we got to catch up since pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
you are incredibly humble. Well, can you look at this camera right here and tell people, yes, sir, where they can find you on social media, and then also what projects you have coming up? Yeah,
social media. You can find me on like Instagram. That's R2 in the Sideshow on Instagram. Okay. Honestly, you can find Ryan Roth and the Sideshow on like YouTube, iTunes, all that, Spotify, all that jibber jab. I'll be running the festival circuit this summer. That'll be fun.
Awesome.
Including my own, which will be dope.
Very cool.
Or the 8th, 9th, and 10th of July. We got a little folk and soul fest going out at Annika Woods. We're gonna do things a little different, but we got a bunch of the local songwriters and stuff coming out.
Very cool.
Should be fun.
Very cool. Well, to all of you that have been listening or watching today, thank you so much for joining us once again. If you are not already following us on social media, you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram at Heart of Glass the Pod. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, and please make sure you stay tuned at the end for a preview of next week's episode. We love you so much. Thank you for spending time with us, and thank you for once again helping us and helping you to get to know the humans who make up the heart of the Glass City on a deeper level.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, and have a great day.
Give me a hug.
Absolutely.
But now I look back at it, and every single person that's been in my life, no matter what their position is, whether it was, you know, an ex or a family friend, whatever, if I am no longer in that person's life, they all have contributed to who I am today. And that's how I look at it, because it's the truth to me. I don't believe in, you know, bashing those people or whatever. Definitely stand up for yourself if it's necessary. But I think we need to understand that, I had this thought today, people are always saying that when you go through a situation the second time, it's because you didn't learn your lesson the first time. And I disagree. I think sometimes it's to see if you did learn your lesson the first time.
Kind of like a test.
Kind of like a test for yourself, because you gain confidence in that moment of, hey, I learned my lesson the last time. And I know the last time I would have done it this way, which was the total wrong way of doing it.
Yeah.
And even though the emotions were all the same, the love was real, I'm choosing now, you know, I can allow myself to be hurt and allow myself to be upset, but I'm not approaching it from that standpoint any longer.